Hello and welcome to Selling in a Skirt with Judy Hoberman. I'm Judy. For those of you that have been with us before, welcome back. And for those of you that are brand spanking new, welcome. We are so excited to have you here. Selling in a Skirt is all about connection, community, and building amazing relationships. We empower professional women and we encourage men to be champions and advocates for and with women. What I love most about what I get to do is I have the most incredible guests, and today is no exception. So I'm going to read just a little bit about my guest, and then I'm going to let her talk. So we have Jessica Norsch. So here's some things, and she's a true slacker, I must say. She's over 13 years experience in the healthcare industry, primarily based out of this area, the DFW area. She's a registered nurse by background, having achieved her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Texas at Arlington. She also has a Master of Science in Healthcare Administration degree from Texas Tech University Health Science Center. And she's previously served the patient population as an ICU nurse, but transitioned away from patient care in 2015. And for the last 9 years or so, she's really been focused on risk, and she wanted to make sure that she talks about quality and patient safety. So she's got a lot to talk about, and we have a lot to talk about. So Jessica, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Judy. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here, and I know we've been talking about this, and who knew how long it was going to take for us to get a date on the calendar.
I know.
So here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you love what you do.
Okay. So a little bit more on the intro that you already gave. I always start with my family. So I am a mother. I have a teenage son. He's going into his junior year of high school. Daughter, sister, aunt to 7 nephews. We're a very busy family. And then, as you read there, I am a nurse by background. I was previously an ICU nurse, transitioned away from patient care, and have been focused on quality, risk, and patient safety over the last 9 years for different organizations. Currently serving as a risk manager at an organization. Really just passionate about improving the quality of care that's delivered to the patient population, and driving excellence within healthcare. We've all had healthcare experiences, some good, some not so good. So that is the focus of quality, risk, and patient safety, is improving the not so good. So
that's interesting. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of today, quality is really important, and we all have had stories, some good, some bad, or some good, some better.
Yes.
But why isn't quality one of the most important things that, doctors, nurses, administrators, why don't they talk about it more?
Well, I might be biased, but I believe that quality is part of everyone's role, no matter the healthcare setting, no matter their facility. It is part of everyone's role, even if they don't specialize it like I do. It needs to be talked about more. I know that it is certainly talked about behind the scenes, but bringing it to the forefront and involving patients in those conversations. Some patients think that we're not doing something, meaning perhaps they take it as us withholding care. That's not always the case. We look at it through the lens of quality standards, patient safety. What is the risk to the patient if we move forward with this, or if this is not part of their care plan? We have to look at all of that. So
so it's a very big topic.
Yes,
a very big topic. Yeah,
absolutely.
I knew that.
Yes.
Okay, but there's always a backstory.
Yes.
So a lot of people do grow up and say, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an attorney, whatever. But a lot of people don't say that, and even if they do, they don't always end up in that direction. So what is your backstory? How did you get to where you are?
Oh, my backstory is a winding road. So my original degree was actually not related to healthcare at all. I have an original bachelor's degree in interior design with a minor in architecture, and I practiced in that field for about 4 years at an architecture firm here in Dallas. I worked on the interior side with corporate design. We all have stories of what happened in 2008 and the trickle-down effect. And the trickle-down effect for me occurred in 2010. The firm that I worked for, multiple rounds of layoffs, just with everything that happened in 2008. I had already been thinking about, very quietly, I thought I wanted to go back to school for nursing. I actually originally tried when I was still pursuing my interior design degree. But my parents said, why don't you just finish that degree? And then one day, if you want to go back, you can absolutely do that, which is what I did. So I was laid off in February of 2010, but I was back in school in that May, because I saw it as an opportunity to make that pivot. So I know we're talking about resilience today. That's, one of my resilient stories. Because at that point, even trying to get into healthcare wasn't working for me. And I don't blame, them. My resume had nothing to do with healthcare. And at that point, I started, you and I have had conversations about this, looking at job postings. What are they asking for as an entry level? And so I went and obtained some certifications and then still wasn't getting interviews. Being the determined person that I am, I said, I'm going to start volunteering at a hospital and kind of come in the back door that way. And I met people, and that led to my first job in healthcare. I was a patient care tech in an ICU, which then opened the doors to become an ICU nurse, which then another resilient story was unexpectedly moving away from bedside care, which brought me over to quality, so that's
interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. So it is long and windy. And
Yes.
a lot of times we don't even, I remember when I graduated high school, I wanted to go to medical school. Now, I'm from a different generation.
Right.
My parents
Yes.
are a different generation. And my mom told me, girls are not doctors.
Yes.
They're teachers and they're secretaries. We didn't even
Right.
have admins back then.
Right.
They're secretaries, And I thought, that doesn't even make sense to me. Why couldn't I do that? But
Right.
because we always obeyed our elders, I was a teacher.
Yes.
And I still believe that, when you do coaching and trainings, you're still a teacher.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
was not my number one choice.
Right.
But we are going to talk about resilience because everybody has a story where we've fallen down.
Yes.
No matter what. Now, maybe it's a little fall, maybe it's a big fall. I don't like to say that we've all experienced failures because failure is an
Correct.
event. It's not a person.
Correct.
But in the reality is, we've all had them, and the best way to overcome them is to learn from them and to grow from them and to conquer those fears so that you can apply for
Yes.
something or volunteer or whatever. And it's been said that perseverance is stubbornness with a purpose.
Yes. I will agree with that.
Right? So what does resilience actually mean to you, and how does it play in a professional journey?
So I think, first off, I think some people are born with a certain element of just inherent resilience. And then for others, it's a skill, that they've learned. For me, I would definitely say that it's ingrained in me. I'm determined, perseverance, driven, sometimes stubbornly independent. But, when I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. So I've had many, many moments of resilience in my life, some, smaller kind of day-to-day type things, and then others, at the time they seemed almost insurmountable, that needed to be overcome. So for me, resilience is not, it's a series of actions, a series of needing to pivot. I know that you and I have talked before, it's not always, a hard right towards change. No. I think resilience is a series of smaller changes, maybe 1 degree at a time, and then when you look back, you see, the curve, or in my case, the kind of winding road. But I don't think the measure of resilience can be based on the success at the end, because you can be resilient and not meet your goal,
right.
But you have still come an exceptionally far way. And I wish and I hope that more people would give themselves credit, for the work that they've done, regardless of the outcome.
So that's a really good point about you don't have to have reached your goal
Right.
in order to show that you're resilient. So where in your professional journey did you show the most resilience? Is it, like when you first had to go and do all of this, or was it something that maybe, happened and you just said, I could do this, I'm going to get myself up, and so on and so forth?
I think, thinking about it, there's probably three 3 points. The first being, when I was laid off and making that initial pivot over to healthcare, because that was, people supported me, but they were also,
Right.
Are you sure?
Right.
Are you sure?
Are you crazy?
Yes. And again, just being determined. Yeah, I'm absolutely sure. And then the second was, ICU nurse, kind of small. We're about the same, about the same size. And you're working with patients who need full care. They're intubated, they're sedated, and it's very hard on the body. And so I went out on medical leave, for something that I was experiencing. I was in physical therapy, and then when I came back, I came back on light duty, and I was placed down in quality just to help me, get my hours. And then they happened to have an opening, and not being ready necessarily to move away from bedside care, but that moment, we can have all the plans that we want for our life, and then life is going to do what life does.
Life happens.
Yes.
Yes.
So I had a path that I thought I was on, and then this opportunity presented itself, which I think is also a critical point to resilience. It's not always going to look like what you think it should look like. And in the midst of trying to overcome one thing, life is going to drop a boulder in your path. And I think it's important to recognize that. Sometimes resilience, we can, okay, I'm going to work with this, and I can change that, and I can do this. Sometimes life drops something in your path that you cannot change. You will hate it, you will want to change it, but there's no option for change. And so that's when the pivots start to happen, is what can I do to at least control part of this and move forward. And so that's what happened. I had this path, and then an opportunity presented itself. I wasn't ready, but recognized this could work. And I loved it. I fell in love with it, down in quality, the investigations and the data analytics, and just
like a little detective.
Yes. So that, that was a big pivot. And then I had, I know that we're talking about career and work, but I had a personal health, I'll call it a crisis, life or death, essentially fully depending on the healthcare system and machines for months to overcome that. That certainly wasn't on my radar.
Right.
It happened. And, with my son especially, you have to keep going. That's how I view it. People ask me, they say, Jessica, you're so resilient. Like, how do you do it? You've overcome so much. For me, I know everybody is different. I don't give myself any other option. There's only one option, and that is to move forward and keep going. I think in today's world, we're all used to having a plethora of options and choices.
But you don't always have that.
Correct. And I think sometimes it helps to almost narrow your focus instead of, like, what if I did this, or what if it could work out this way.
Well, but then you have the what ifs all the time, and
yes.
Like what if, but if you're doing something that, if something hits you that you have no control over, there is no what if.
Correct.
You have to just.
And there wasn't in that situation.
Right.
Like, the only way to move forward in life was just to move forward, and not saying it like it's easy, not belittling anything, but sometimes resilience, the word that is almost having to heave yourself into the next day. It's messy, it can be ugly, but for me, my option was to keep going. So that's what I do.
Well, we're glad you're that person.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
It's difficult. It is difficult. I was reading a story one day, and it was about a physician, and she was in medical school, and she was very smart, very, very smart. And as she progressed through her career, as she's still in school and as she's going to be a resident and so on and so forth, she would ask a lot of questions. She knew that she knew more than anybody.
Yes.
She presented herself better than anybody. But the person that she was reporting to said to her that she's never going to go far, she'll never be chief resident or anything like that. And she said, first she took it, she didn't say anything, and then she came back to him and she said, well, explain why, because I'm intelligent, and I mean, her grades were amazing, her bedside manner was amazing. He said, you ask too many questions.
Oh.
Now, for me, when I read that, because I've been dubbed the question queen, it really struck a chord with me. But
Yes.
so I guess the question would be, number one, wouldn't you want a doctor that asked a lot of questions so they would have the experience and the knowledge?
Yes.
But the second thing is, do you think that resilience differs between men and women in the workplace? I mean, do women face more challenges in other industries? I mean, I'm not in the medical industry.
Right.
I come from financial services, and that's a big fat yes. You know, it's
Right.
very, I mean, there's a lot of differences. Everybody says, oh, but things have changed. Okay, so it's not here anymore, it's here.
Right.
You know, it's not 12%, it's 13%.
Right.
You know, whatever that is. But so have you seen it? Have you felt it?
I have. You know, I still think for however much the workplace is changing on both sides, for women and for men, I still think that some of those traditional gender roles still exist. And for women, that means, I mean, it means overcoming a little bit, you know, a little bit more, just because that mindset is still there for women. Oh, you know, like if someone's a mother, oh, she's distracted, oh, she has that, like, oh, she's trying
She's
to carry
not fully committed.
Correct. And that's just, it's just not true,
Yeah.
you know, and especially with COVID and with men in the workplace, I think that men, you know, I think that women maybe have a little bit more grace for trying to be resilient and trying to overcome that. But I do think that men, it's expected, you know, and I know that there's a lot of talk these days about, you know, men's mental health and it being okay to not be okay for everybody. You know, coming out of COVID, that was a huge adjustment and shock for people. But I think in the workplace, women, you know, they do still kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that mentors, colleagues, coaches, friends, organizations, do you think that they can contribute more to building, you know, the muscle of resilience for women?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The organizations that I've been involved in, you know, they have dedicated mentoring programs. They have dedicated women's programs, and not a women's program in the sense that it's only for women. You know, men are there too, and I appreciate seeing the men there because they're there to learn and to better understand, you know, the support that women need and how, you know, just we differ. And in those same groups, you know, to have that direct peer time with other women in the organization, because it can feel at times isolating, you know, if that's your personality. You know, I make friends, you know, at wherever I work. I will say that in the past, you know, I've had a core group of friends, and I still do at work, but I think about this when you said friends and resilience. For this organization that I worked at, there was a bench outside, you know, a few feet away from our office. And myself and two of my other friends, we had a system that if one of us walked by and said bench, or if we wrote it down on a Post-it and put it on, you know, the other's desk, we knew we all need to go to the bench. Something has happened.
And you need to talk.
Yes. But
not everybody has that.
Right. Right. And it's also, I'll say, you know, women in the workplace sometimes are not kind
Yes.
to one another.
Which is a really sad comment.
It's
true.
true.
Yes, it's a sad
true.
comment.
And when you think of women and resilience and women building each other up in the workplace, if you're a woman out there and you think that the only way for you to get ahead or to overcome some, you know, have resilience is to belittle and put other women down, I think that speaks more to your character than it does to your ability to be resilient.
Or to be a leader.
Yes, and that's,
yes.
Some people might think that's harsh, but that's...
No, and I have been the recipient of many times.
Same. Yes.
And you just think, like, I would never say that. I would never do that.
Right.
Or in your head you're thinking, did she really say that out loud? In front of all these people?
Yes, with the filter. Where's your filter?
There's no filters there. Yeah. I just, you know, I always truly believe that you don't have to go through life alone.
Correct.
You don't. And in the workplace where you spend more time with people than you do your family, you don't have to call them your work family or anything. You just be kind.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, we are all people. We are all humans
Yeah.
trying to make it from one day to the next, and most likely do the best for ourselves, for our families, for, like what I was saying, I'm passionate about improving quality for patient. Like, we are all
Yeah.
trying to move forward in some way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, resilience is not always a topic in a conversation that people want, that they really want to share or,
Right.
Whatever. But if the pandemic taught us nothing else, it was about resilience.
Yes.
And everybody, the entire world was affected. I mean, everybody was. So I remember March 20th,
Yes.
March 2020. I remember March 13th, my calendar was filled for the rest of the year. I was so excited. I thought, this is going to be my biggest year yet,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And one by one, they all fell off. I mean, some people said, well, let's just wait a couple of months and see what happens. Some people said, we're out. We can't do anything.
Right.
And I remember giving myself permission to go to bed, pull the covers over my head, and just wallow in it.
Yes.
Okay. Just because, and that's not me as a person.
Same.
Right?
Yep.
And so I did that. And then I gave myself like 20 minutes and I got myself up
Yep.
and I said, okay, now what? Because if I just lay here, nothing's going to happen. Because there are
Yes.
still people today that are waiting for the world to get back to normal. But I remember in that moment thinking, if I could only think of a way and especially because I work 99% with women, if I could
Yes.
find a way to bring women together, if I can give them community, if I can give them, a connection. And so the very first thing I did, now remember, this was March 13th, so the very first thing I did for 2 weeks later was I created this panel of exceptional women. And I started out with financial services, and I called
Yes.
4 of my people, and I said, because I know my people.
Right.
You know your
Right.
people, right?
Right.
We are each other's people.
Right.
So I called and I said, I'm having this panel, and I'd like you to be a speaker. And we're going to talk about connection. Yes. And I put it out on social media, and I truly did nothing else but put it out there. And we had about 150 to 200 women that showed up.
Yeah.
Okay? So this was a one and done thing. In my mind, I brought them together.
Right.
This was a great thing.
Right.
Until we were done. And then my phone was blowing up. Like, when is the next panel? Can I be on your panel?
People need it.
Right.
They
We
need
ended up
it.
going 13 weeks.
Wow.
And then the final week was the reunion for everybody. And all the speakers came back. We had 48 speakers from all over the world.
Oh my goodness.
The point is that we proved to the fact that you can do things without having to see people in person,
Yes.
especially in the industries where they say you can't.
Correct.
We brought in people from the medical profession that were hit harder than anybody.
Yes.
And they at least showed up, So resilience doesn't have to be something that is a difficult topic.
Right.
So why do we make it to be something that is almost taboo?
I think it's because, the starting point for resilience is usually something that has happened that is less than positive,
Well,
let's say.
yeah.
Yes. And I think that people still feel the need to not talk about it. I don't want anybody to know that this happened to me.
But this was the world.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So it wasn't like it happened to me because it didn't happen to you. It
Right.
happened to all of us.
Right. But I think people, like, the mentality is still, and, was back then, that was their coping. That, like, what do you say when you don't know what to say and what to do? And we hadn't been in that situation before. And I do think you're right. I mean, it's still taboo, and to let people in that way, even if we are struggling with the same thing, just, don't talk about it. Just let me go through it myself, when really there are strength in numbers, even in resilience. And that is a huge thing that I have learned through all of my resilience journeys, because I am very independent. And if the biggest lesson that resilience has taught me is that it is okay to ask and accept hope. Or help, not hope.
And hope.
And hope. But help, and I think that a lot of times, and this was my mindset, that if people are offering help, then that must mean that they think, I can't handle it. It must be very obvious to them that I can't do this on my own, which is not the correct thinking. If people are offering help,
It's because they care about you.
They care about you, and they recognize, wow, this is really difficult. I want to do something to help you. Accept the help. accepted. I mean, it's
But it's easier to give help than it is to receive the help.
Yes.
And that's the hard part. And going
Yes.
through this whole crisis for years. I mean, I didn't wear shoes for years. I mean, that's how bad it was, because I didn't
Right.
go out of my house. There was no
Right.
place to go.
Right.
But I think that the resilient portion of the program was that we all survived it. I mean, there were
Yes.
horrible things that happened to people, but
Yes.
the people that
Yes.
we went through it, and we have lessons. You know, I have programs that I built that I would never have thought of building because I had no option.
right.
You know, we go through
Right.
things, and that's it. But you also brought up a good point about mental health. You know, and I think that part of being resilient is you also have to understand where self-care
Yes.
fits in.
Yes.
And even, you know, when you think about, I mean, right now it's Olympic time, you know, and who's the biggest star that they're talking about is Simone Biles.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
did she do in the last Olympics? She left, she walked
Yes.
out because she was having issues and she didn't know how to deal with it while she was, I was watching something about her, and she said she was almost afraid she was going to hurt herself because she was lost when she was flipping all those things,
right.
and she didn't know where she was going to land. So you could actually get hurt. But she also proved a point that mental health is not something that you have to be afraid of.
No.
But is that part of self-care? And
Yes.
how does that fit into, what role does it play in being resilient? And how do you prioritize yourself when you're trying to be resilient?
That's a really great question for everyone, but I think especially for women, because women
Yeah.
are naturally caring and nurturing, and let me help you before I help myself. And that's critical for women, you know, to recognize and understand, I do not have the capacity, I do not have the strength to help other people when I am fully drained. So as women, we have to recognize and take those points of self-care. And if your schedule is completely busy, you block out time for self-care. If it's 15 minutes during the work, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go outside and just sit and not have, you know, the calls and the meetings and the emails and everything. You just sit outside in nature. If that's, you know, what someone...
So it doesn't have to be something that's, you know, weeks long or...
No. I think little moments, you know, if you don't have a huge amount of time to dedicate to yourself, you make the moments. You carve out, I need this for me today. I need this to re-energize, to calm everything down. There's so much noise in the world and so many distractions, and like we were saying, so many choices and what ifs and all.
It's hard to do.
Yes, it is.
It's hard for you to do it here.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's another whole story for another whole day. But
Yes.
but right. I mean, yeah. So I truly believe that we became a lot stronger through the pandemic because
so.
you had to do things that you've never experienced before.
There's no other option.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to shift away from the pandemic. I want to go back to the workforce for a minute.
Okay.
So, you know, my favorite topic is women.
Yes.
And I talk about the lonely leader.
Yes.
And the lonely leader is really a woman that's gotten to a certain level in her career where she doesn't know who to talk to. Maybe doesn't have somebody to talk to. She doesn't know who has an agenda, who doesn't have an agenda.
Right.
She doesn't know who's going to take her ideas and produce them as her own. And again, all these things I'm saying have happened.
Correct.
Yes, and I know the same.
Yes.
But I guess the question is, why do you think that happens? Although other than the fact that, you know, women are women, but where does resilience and vulnerability play into the fact that maybe we can support the lonely leader? Or I go into companies and I see this woman, and
Yes.
she's lonely. She's lonely. And when and especially as a coach, when you go in and they're like,
Right.
because they know it's safe.
Yes.
You know?
And I think that's the key part, is that women in leadership, or even a woman transitioning to a new role, even if it's not leadership.
It's all leadership, though.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Who and what is safe?
Right,
Who can
right.
I safely go to and say, hey, I'm not okay with this. I'm trying to understand this. I'm trying to jump, from this step to this step. I know that you have done it before. How did you do that? Because as women, again, we've all experienced kind of maybe a little bit of like condescending and I can't believe you don't know that, and that stepping on one to get to a higher place. And that's when you're trying to be resilient and vulnerable, that's a very scary situation to be in, is to open up to someone and have them completely cut you down. And I think that then feeds into more loneliness, more unsure,
and you won't open yourself up again.
Yes. So then when women go to, having mentors or having coaches and they build that relationship and this is a safe place, and that's when it all comes out. So I do think that coaches, mentors, I think they're critical for women especially. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a coach in your that has dealt with your industry, or a mentor in your industry. They don't have to be in your direct reporting line. Certainly, having them in your industry has a little bit of advantage, but I have mentors across all different industries. And they're people that I worked with in the past, and I know that they give sound advice. And even if it's not a one-to-one, I can definitely take this and apply it in the same way. It's still, I kind of think of it as like a buffet, when they're giving advice. I think that will work. I will take that. That is probably not something that I don't think would work, and you just kind of piece it together. But I think having those kind of safe spaces to have honest conversations and be vulnerable is really important.
Yeah. And I also think that a lot of times companies say, well, we're not going to bring in any external consultants because we already pay people inside, so we'll just use them as our coaches and mentors. And you're not going to get the same effect because there's still, that person knows too much about the business, the company, and you're not going to be as open. So it's a very interesting concept.
It is.
One day we won't have the lonely leader.
Right.
And there are men that are lonely leaders as well.
Absolutely,
so
there are.
I'm not saying it's
Absolutely.
just 100% women.
Right.
But,
Right.
Well, I know you are a leader, so we're just going to go with that. So what would be your number one piece of advice that you can share with women in it doesn't matter what industry, women that are in business?
I would say a women leader leading others, please empower the individuals on your team. Please empower the women on your team. Recognize when they're trying to be vulnerable. It might be a little bit messy, but it's an uncomfortable place to go. Recognize when they're trying to be resilient. Show them grace. Take them under your wing. Help empower them. If they want to grow in a certain direction, maybe it's not what you had thought they would. It's growth, and it's their career, and it's their path. Help them. Help them.
I love that. I love that. So what are you most excited about for the rest of 2024 and, to make a positive impact in your industry?
Well, Judy, you've known me for a little while. You know that I am a lifelong learner. I'm always learning something, doing something. I have quite a few goals that I'm excited to check off before the end of the year. I'm studying for a couple of certifications, just received a certification a couple of weeks ago. That was a long time goal. Really empowering my team. And we have, a few projects that we're working through, things that we want to try, things that are under development. We work with a lot of data. We do a lot of reviews, data and reviews and investigating, as, you had described it earlier. That's what I'm passionate about. Just continuing to push the standard of care forward into a higher level. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you.
So I know there's going to be people that want to connect with you and learn
Yes.
more about you. So where can they find you? What's the best way?
So I am on LinkedIn, Jessica Norsch, like Judy said. And then in addition to LinkedIn, I am also a board member for the North Texas Association for Healthcare Quality, which we are dedicated to trying to enhance and improve healthcare quality within the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'm also involved in ACAG of North Texas on the mentorship committee, because I believe so strongly in mentorship.
Me too.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm around.
Well, you are around, and obviously, if you're in the DFW area, you probably have met Jessica somewhere or have seen her somewhere, but she is a woman to watch, totally a woman to watch.
Thank you.
And she is an amazing woman. I don't know. I can't. She just is. She's an amazing woman. She's very intelligent. She is really dedicated and focused, and she's in healthcare. She's in healthcare. So if you want to learn a little bit more about her, it'll be all in the show notes.
Thank
so
you,
thank
Judy.
you, Jessica.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, I really loved having you here. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being with us today on Selling in a Skirt with Judy Hoberman, where we empower professional women and we encourage men to champion women. This has been one of our favorite shows so far, so make sure you stay tuned and see what's happening next time. See you soon.